Okay, so today what we're going to look at, have your foldable in front of you. If you were one of the people that did not finish your homework, you have an advantage where you're following along in class. It will continue to be marked as late. Remember, 3 late works and you're only in lunch detention and you're emailing home. So, stay on top of your homework. If yours is late, make sure you end up doing it tonight, because you cannot do tonight's, tomorrow's, or Wednesday's homework without having your scatter plot made. You have to have your scatter plot made to do the homework. Okay? Everything we're doing is based off the scatter plot. So you have to do that. If you did not get yours done, go back to today's video, because we're having the answer key right here. I mean, it's really easy. If you don't have it done, you can finish it. We have the answers here. This is your effort. Okay? Number 1.
Is that on one?
Yep. So when I put my videos in, when I upload my videos, remember, you have to go to my content, and today's will be under day 2. I'll show you exactly where I'll put it. So, number 1, your scatter plot. In case you made mistakes, you can change it. But we should have a title. When I looked at all 3 classes, this is the biggest thing people forget. Step 2 about labeling the title and the axis. Our title for the graph of number 1 was age and data used. You might have made it something different. That's okay. The y-axis should have been the data used. The x-axis should have been the age. Your graph should have looked something like mine if you look up here. Here's my points here. Oh, it's because I'm on this. But my points are right in here. You can see how they're trending down to the right. If yours doesn't look like that, make sure you go back and check. If you want me to help you with it, I will a little bit later. Number 2. Our title should have been something like fat versus grams. Our y-axis was our grams. Our x-axis was our fat. My points, your trend, however you did it, should have looked something similar to this, where they're moving up and to the right. On number 3, high school versus grades. So in high school and then in college. So we should have had high school and this should have been college. Your points should have looked really similar to this one, where you had this guy down here, and then most of them were over here in the top right. Okay? Those were your 3 examples. If yours is a little different, it might have been because your scale was a little different, but the trend should have been about the same. Your dots still should have followed the same pattern. Real quick, I did this later with everyone else, but we're going to do it right now. So, I've already graded yours. What I want you to do for me, remember this page that we put in the very front of our notebook? Do it quick. Score. How'd you do on yours? To be honest, what you can go ahead and write, say, what did you get out of 3? There was 3 graphs. Did you do your graphs correct? If you got all 3 of them and you think yours looked correct, put 3 out of 3. Did you turn it in on time? Yes or no? If you're a no, you can't give yourself 3 out of 3 yet. Later, you can, but you still want to know that you did it late. What do I not understand? If you were late on this, or you noticed, hey, I got 0 out of 3 on my graphs, did that affect your grade that I'm turning into my grade book today? No. Even if you messed up all 3 of your graphs, you attempted it. If you get them all wrong, please come see me so we can fix that mistake. Don't just go, I still get credit for completion. No, come see. Let's fix the mistake, especially so you don't mess up tomorrow's or today's. So, if you get 0 to 3, what was it? To be honest, I think the number 1 thing people had troubles with was identifying the scale. That's the hardest part that we're going to do this whole unit with scatter plots. The hardest thing is the scale. So if you have that down, you should feel very confident today. The other thing is, some of you, what you should write down here is label. If you did not label, write down label, your title and your axis. If you forgot to do that, that way when you're studying for your test, you're like, ooh, I do not want to forget that, because if you didn't do that, that's probably 1.5 points off. Probably 0.5 point for your title, 0.5 point for x-axis, 0.5 point for your y-axis. Alright. Now, Andrew, you were asking where my videos are. So make sure, content library, and I'll put them right up here at the top of the lesson. So yesterday's, there it was. Today, after I get done, I'll upload to YouTube, and then I'll put the link right here. Okay, everyone go ahead, open your folder up to that very first tab. Your foldable, your scatter plot folder. Do you remember how we had those 4 pictures of graphs that look just like that?
No.
We had those 4, they're on the orange page. They look exactly like this one. I'm going to pause the video, the recording. I'm going to give you 30 seconds. I want you to turn and talk to your neighbor. Just so you can do this with us. I'm going to have you turn and talk to your neighbor, and I'm going to give a dum-dum sucker to someone that gets the conversation started when I ask them. But what do we know special about each one of these graphs? All 4 of them are scatter plots. They all have points, all represent data. But what's special about each one? Okay? Turn, talk with your neighbor, see if you guys can figure something out. All right, good. I like coming around. There was actually some really, really good conversations. Brady and Alejandra, I kept pushing on there like, oh, it shows a pattern. It's going up, it's going down. I said, well, that's not a math term. Remember, when we talk about mathematicians, we want to be specific on things. And I don't want to say, oh, it's going up. And be like, what? That's stupid. What's that mean? We have to use vocabulary. So, Ricky, what can you tell me?
The first one has the positive thing. The second one has
When you say the first one has a positive thing, what do you mean positive thing?
like a positive rate or something.
Yeah, kind of like the rate. If you think back to last semester, remember when we had our line and when we did our rate or our slope, and it went, when we read left to right, when it went up and to the right, we called that a positive slope, correct? When we look at the correlation, we look at our dots, and they're going from the bottom left to the top right. They're going up. We will identify this correlation. That's one of your assignments today. You will call this, write this on your sheet. We'll say this is a positive correlation. When all the dots seem to trend going up and to the right, we call that a positive correlation. What that is meaning is when my x value is going up and increasing, my y value also is increasing. So a positive correlation is when the trend of the dots is going up and to the right. Kind of like Ricky said, just like the slope. So if that one's positive, what would be the second one? Go on. Okay, Alejandra? Negative. This one is what we are going to call a negative correlation. The reason it's a negative correlation is when x increases, y is decreasing. Now remember, a scatter plot, that very first day, we told you a scatter plot is kind of when we are comparing 2 sets of data to see if there's any kind of relationship. I did this when I had to write this big paper. We were looking, hey, elementary students, if they play a sport, how many sports do they play? Does that affect their grade? Kids that played 0 sports, their grade. Played 1 sport, their grade. 2 sports. And we look to see, is there any relationship between them? On here, this is the example I've been using with my whole class. And they kind of get a little silly, but stay with me. Let's pretend right now I'm comparing grades and waffles. How many waffles do you eat? According to this, what's that tell me about grades and waffles? If I have a positive correlation, as a mathematician, this is why we want to know positive correlation. I can go up to Bryson and I'll be like, Bryce. And I'm like, Bryce, did you know that there is a positive correlation between waffles being eaten in your grade? And Bryce would go, huh? What does that mean to Bryce? What does he think that means?
Pancakes aren't as good.
Maybe pancakes aren't as good. But what's that have to do? What's the data? If I say there's a positive correlation, what's that telling me about waffles and their scores? Huh? What about the waffles? They're good for your grades. The more waffles I eat, the better my score. Does that sound like something true?
Yes.
Yeah.
Probably.
That's not healthy.
Probably not. So, I'm going to actually use, do we really think, like not being silly, whatever, but honestly, we don't think that there's a relationship between waffles and their score.
I mean, there could be.
No. Maybe magically we'll find out there is some connection, but we really don't think there should be, right? So what if I told you this last one, we're going to skip this third one, if this last one represented grades and waffles ate. Okay, the first one was a positive correlation, meaning when one part increased, the other increased. The second one was our negative correlation. When one increased, the other one decreased. So if the third one is real life, waffles and grades, what do you think we're going to call that one? No.
No, I learned that. No, it's another word. I learned this already.
No association.
Yeah, that's the word I was going to use.
No.
Yes. He was getting all hyped up.
What are we talking about? What's this today's lesson about?
No.
What?
No correlation.
Correlation. We would say there's no correlation. When I tell you that there is no correlation, that means we have no pattern.
No, it's just
That the amount of one thing does not affect the other one. So when we did grades and waffles, my grade does not depend on how many waffles I eat, or the number of waffles I eat does not change what my grade is. That does not make a difference. We want to know this. Businesses want to know this. Teachers, we look at this stuff at times because I want your grades to be getting better. And when we look at things like our links time, and we find out how many minutes students spend actually using their links time, and we look at their score, we say, is this worth it? Are we just wasting our time? Are we doing extra work as teachers? Or when we work with you guys extra, does it help your scores go up? And when we look at it and say, hey, there's a positive correlation. The more links time we use, your scores go up. We say, hey, we want to use that then. If we started using a different math curriculum, and I use this different math curriculum, and the more we use it, and I see your scores start going down, I'm like, whoa, there's a negative correlation here. Do we want to continue to use that math method? And then there's times where my principal, we tried something totally different at Chin Elementary when you're teaching. We changed something up, and me and another teacher tried it, and we compared with another class. What we did different was this no correlation made no difference on the kids' scores. They're all over there. So, did it make a difference? No. Did it hurt the students? No. We said, we really found out the kids would learn the same either way. It didn't make a difference. The third one is the last one, and I left this one last because we won't use it as much. But we will call this one non-linear.
I knew that.
And what we're going to say on this is it's going to form a curve. Ricky, I think, was on it. Told me. at the beginning. Ricky talked about the slope. Tomorrow we're going to kind of work on this line. But do you see all these dots? It kind of looks like it's making a straight line.
Yeah.
Kind of looks like a straight line. No correlation. Is there any straight line? No, that's why it's no correlation. On this one, non-linear, can I make a straight line?
No.
No, it's curved. So it's going to be called non-linear. We'll get into that later, but it's one that we're not going to use as much. We will mainly be working with positive, negative, no correlation. In fact, one of your assignments is I'm going to give you 12 examples, and you have to sort them into positive, negative, no. It's one of them. It's pretty easy. Actually, if when I'm handing it out, if you're doing it, by the time I get done handing them out, most people were done with it.
You said one.
Yep, you have 2 parts. This is the card sort. I'm going to save it to the end of class. That way, if you get done with it, you can work on your other homework. Okay, right underneath that page that you're on, still vocabulary, we have to identify the terms that we are going to use today. One, we've already said when we look at a scatter plot, the first thing we're going to do is say if it's positive, negative, or no correlation. There's 3 other things that we have to identify. Gaps, clusters, and outliers. So, gaps refer to, does anyone know what a gap is?
I got no living answers. When there's like no dots there.
Yeah. So it's kind of like the missing data. So, missing data. So a gap, kind of like Michael Strahan's teeth. He has that big gap in there, right? Missing teeth. So, a gap in scatter plots is where our data is missing. You should have a picture underneath on yours that looks just like mine. So I'm going to show you how you're going to do it. Pretend this is your homework. Here's the scatter plot you guys made for today. It's right here. Is there a gap in the data?
Yeah.
It looks like, hey, here's all my data going this way, but then for some reason right here, it stopped. Do we know why? No. But that's where we're going to start interpreting our graphs. And that's where you're going to start asking questions like, well, maybe it's because of, or I bet that this happened, or we get a real answer. Okay. Here's how we identify a gap. So I know you guys can see it on the scatter plot. It's right there. It's that little space. But how do we identify it? You're going to do it by using 2 explanations. First, we're going to identify where it came between on the x-axis. You're going to identify that gap on the x-axis. Now, here, I'm going to zoom in. You guys agree this is my missing area right here, right?
Yeah.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look on this left side. This is kind of where it stopped, looking left to right. It was like dot, 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 and then nothing. So right here, correct? That's where it started, my gap, correct? Well, where is that on the x-axis? Just go straight down. It's at, oops, my line got a little crooked. It's at about 15. So you're first going to say, my gap is between 15 and, looks like, oh, here's where it starts again, which is about 25. Zoom out. Whoa, not that much. Alright. So it's between 15 and 25 on our x-axis. Now, I don't want you to shut out because I want you guys to try and see if you can do this one by your own. But the next one, I then also want to identify the gap based off its y-axis. So do the same thing on this one. The gap we've already identified is right in here. So where would be the lowest point for the y-axis, and then what's the next high point? Please don't shout it out yet. Write down what you think on your notes, and then check it with the neighbor. Don't shout it out, let everyone think. Who thinks they're able to come up with the y? Ooh, couple people. Let's get some of these up today. Already over if you want.
Hey, over here.
Nathaniel. Nathaniel, what'd you write down, buddy? Okay, so 35, right about here. It might have been a little high because we had that point. So I'm just going to correct yours. I understand you said 35. I wouldn't say, no, wrong, you're idiot. No, I'll leave it alone. It's okay. But just to correct it a little bit, your 35 would have been there. But see how we have this point right here that still went with it? So I probably went from right there, which that would have been around 32, 33. So I'm going to say 33. And Nathaniel, what was the other point you said? Okay, so you said 23. I come in here. Yeah. There was that point. I'd probably say right at 23. Now, if you said 22, that's fine. If Nathaniel said 35, it would have been okay. It wouldn't have been as accurate. But remember, these are not going to be exact answers. Here's the cool thing. If you look at what we just did, my x is between 15 and 25. My y was here. What did we actually do? We made like a box. We made like the border. We're really saying, hey, look, our gap is right in this area. Is that where our gap was? Absolutely. And that gap that we identified followed our trend. I'm going to draw another thing that will erase all this so it's not a big mess. It followed our trend of our dots. It went right through our box. That's how we know we identified our gap correctly. Okay? Let's go to clusters. All right, cool. What do you think a cluster is?
When they're all bunched up together.
Yeah. The best way we're going to say that, though, is we're going to say they're isolated groups. You should.
Is it okay
So-
if I do outliers?
Sure, when we get to it. Clusters are isolated groups of data points. Careful. Are 2 points together going to make a cluster?
No.
3 points.
No.
No.
6.
If I look at here, one of the biggest things is people say right here, we're kind of looking at, we think that's a cluster. It's not really a cluster. That's just a couple points near each other. The more points we have, the more accurate our data. Clusters are where we get a bunch together. I did this with someone when they were doing their homework with me last hour.
That was me.
Clusters in a scatter plot. If we look at these pictures, now, do you see how like here on this one, there's a, look how many points. Every one of those dots is a data point, something that they graph. Now, do you think there's a cluster there?
Yeah.
Yeah, right here where it gets really thick, that might be a cluster. If I look at, here's another good example. Here, on this example, there's all the points. Do you see how all these got together? All these are coming together. They're not spread out evenly. It's not just a couple points that are close. It's a group of them all hanging out. That is a cluster. So when we look even at, here's a good one. Erase these points. All these different data points. Is this going to be a cluster right here?
No.
No, it's just a couple points next to each other. But if we look at it, I'd say if I look at oranges, there's cluster of orange. Cluster, cluster. Here's a big time cluster.
Go.
So we can identify where there's a bunch. We're not going to give you anything this difficult. Okay? So Don't get overwhelmed. I just want to make sure you guys understand clusters and you don't start identifying just 2 points together. So if I look at today's assignment or today's example, is there a cluster in this graph?
No.
No. So you would say no cluster. Outliers. We have to identify an outlier. Do we know what an outsider is?
Outsider. A point that is not near any other.
Yeah. So we're going to say outliers are points that do not seem to fit in with the other points. Oh, Charles, I did. I'm sorry, buddy. I lied to
He
you.
deserves a sucker for that.
Maybe I'll give you. Okay.
But I deserve
My
a
bad,
sucker.
Charles.
I deserve a
Okay,
sucker for
so outliers are points that are outside our data. If I look in here and I highlight for you guys, we see most of my data is right here. Do we have an outlier? Do we have a point that kind of went away from the rest of our information? Charles?
15.
Okay, we're not just going to say 15.
No,
10.
No, 10.
Good. You will say the exact coordinate. 15, 10. Can we have more than one outlier?
Yes.
Yeah, we can have a couple. Most of my data comes in here. In 2 days, nope, I like 3 days, we're going to start interpreting that, saying, wait a minute, all the other data was a negative one. How come that guy's different? It happens in real life. There's reason. We'll start asking those questions. Okay? There's lots of reasoning for them, but that's the important part. That's the fun part, I feel like, in math, where you start questioning things. That is your assignment today. That is why you had to do yesterday's homework and you had to graph your scatter plots. So, I'm going to show you your homework, the one part, and then I'm going to start giving out the other activity to do. If you turn back to your homework, you had those 3 scatter plots you made. If you did not make yours, you need to make sure you get them copied down so you have them. On each one of the 3, you're going to come on here and you're going to go, okay, this scatter plot, I'm going to look at my scatter. I'm going to say correlation. What type of correlation? Was it a positive? Was it a negative? Was it a no? Then I'm going to look at it and say, okay, were there any gaps? Then I'm going to say, are there any clusters? And then were there any outliers? You are going to do the same thing on each one of them. So you're going to identify each one of the 3 scatter plots, the correlation, the gap, the cluster, the outlier. Huge hit. Huge. Pretty much me just telling you an answer if you're paying attention. Clusters. If you look at yours, I need to see about 5 of the dots almost sitting on top of each other. Look at yesterday's assignment. On any one of the 3, was there a bunch of points sitting on top of each other?
No. No.
Huge hit.
No.
There should not be any clusters on your 3 scatter plots. Clusters is one that I think we're going to make mistakes. Clusters is where a lot of dots are sitting together, not following the trend. Yes? For what? Yep. So, Ricky's asking a clarification. If you go to do your homework and you're confused on gaps again, watch our video again. But remember, gaps, you write 2 parts to it. You say what in the gap, where is it at on the x-axis, where is it on the y-axis. Okay? Alright, second piece of your homework. We'll look up here, and this one I'll give you a sucker if you get it done in class.
I'll have 2 suckers.
Here, you know what? Maybe I'll wait till tomorrow because we only have 5 minutes.
Sir.
I don't feel like we'll get through it. So, I'll tell you what. Tomorrow, we'll do this part. Your only homework for tonight, only homework. Go back to your homework page. On the 3 scatter plots that we graded today, you have to tell me what is the correlation, gap, clusters, outliers for each one. So go to number 1. Then go to number 2. What's the correlation, the gap, the outlier, the cluster? Go to number 3. What's the correlation? What's the gap? What's the cluster? What's the outlier? That's your homework. We'll make it worth 12 points tomorrow, but it's still a completion grade. If you do it, I'll give you full credit. Okay? Work right now. We have 5 minutes. Please don't pack up and start leaving. We have 5 minutes. Get started. I'll come around and help you.